Sports Talk. Let's go. Happy Tuesday, everyone. How you guys doing? It's me, your boy Ryan Flowers, aka Clutch Sports Talk, and I'm back with another live edition of NFL matchups. The season is coming to an end. We only have one game remaining, and that's the Super Bowl that's going to be played on February 9th between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. In tonight's episode, I'm going to be talking about both of those games in which those two teams played in the AFC and NFC Conference Championship games. I'll break down that. Also, Dallas Cowboy fans, you don't want to miss out on this. I have lots to say, as usual, as your anti-Dallas Cowboys fan resident here on the Grid Network. I got something to say about Jerry Jones and the foolery that's taking place down in Texas. And finally, did the Las Vegas Raiders and the Jets get the right guys in Aaron Glenn and Pete Carroll? I'll give you my thoughts on that as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This is NFL Matchups with me, Ryan Flowers. Let's go.
We're going to be here all day, baby. I like this kind of party. I like this kind of party, baby.
Welcome in, everyone. How you guys doing? It's me, your boy Ryan Flowers, aka Clutch Sports Talk, and I'm back with NFL matchups this evening. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, we got lots to talk about as usual. We're going to be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs, and their wins in the conference championship games, and the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones. He's up to his usual tricks there. And then, of course, the Pete Carroll and Aaron Glenn, are those the right guys for the job in New York and here in Las Vegas? So without further ado, before we get moving forward, make sure if you haven't already, subscribe to the Grid Network YouTube channel, as well as the Clutch Sports Talk podcast YouTube channel. Right now, we're streaming live. They are on both YouTubes as well as Facebook. If you just go search Ryan Flowers, you'll catch me right now there. I'm streaming there as well. So keep on with the support. We really appreciate that. But without further ado, man, let's just get straight into it. Let's talk about Philadelphia. It was a dominant performance, I will say, to an extent, right? I think what happened was the Commanders kind of shot themselves in the foot on several occasions, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But before talking about that, let's just take a look back at Philadelphia and where they stood, right? In the beginning of the year, in the first 4 games, they were 2-2, and a lot of people were clamoring for the job of Nick Sirianni. At one point, he was getting into it with fans there at Lincoln Financial Field, and now he is back in a Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. Listen, by far, this is the best team on paper in the National Football League. You got one of the better, if not the best, offensive line. You have 2 phenomenal receivers, arguably top 10 receivers in Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And you have a sensational generational running back in the backfield there with Saquon Barkley. Look, all directions point that they should wrap this thing up on February 9th in New Orleans, right? So, well, and it's hard for me to say that because I do not like the Philadelphia Eagles, but I got to give credit where credit is due. This team has been constructed to win, and not only win, but win at the highest level, and that's competing for a Lombardi trophy here, in which they've done. The playoff runs, the conference champion or the divisional championships, this team has been constructed. You look at their defense, one of the better defensive lines. They got some really good guys in the secondary there. They've drafted what's the guy's name? Cooper, I believe his name is. Linebacker named Braun. You got the guys up front. I mean, they're stacked. This is a stacked team. So I'm not surprised that they're back in the Super Bowl sooner than later, right? But let's talk about the game a little bit. So Jalen Hurts, pretty solid game, 246 yards. I believe he rushed for 3 touchdowns. Now, some of them were tush pushes, but still a pretty solid game put out by him. But Saquon Barkley, to me, is still the difference maker in this offense. He had 118 yards. He had that really, really big play in the beginning of the game. And I believe it was in the first quarter where he ran for 60 yards and a touchdown that really kind of set the tone a little bit and said, like, hey, I'm the guy here. I mean, listen, in regards to Saquon Barkley, he's probably not going to win the MVP. But gosh darn it, he is the MVP in the National Football League. It's not Lamar Jackson. It's not It's not Josh Allen. And I know the voting stopped already, but Saquon Barkley is what makes this team go. And I'll kind of talk about that probably next week as we get ready for the Super Bowl. But not to take away from Jalen Hurts and the rest of the team, but Saquon Barkley is the guy that gets them going. Now, Eagles took advantage of what? Careless mistakes that the Commanders made, especially towards the end of the second half, where you had the fumble by Naomi Brown, and then you had that untimely fumble on the kickoff return with Jeremy Nichols. Now, at that point, the game was like 12-20. That fumble happens on the kickoff return, and then the Eagles end up punching that ball touchdown in, making the score 27-12. And I think at that point, that's when the game shifted. Now, the Commanders still had their chances in the second half, but again, penalties, turnovers, just misplaced. I mean, key opportunities to get back in the game and fight to get back into it really cost the Commanders their chance at maybe playing in the Super Bowl. And Jaden Daniels, it's not like he played bad. He's still a young guy. A lot of people are going to say, well, he can just come back and redo it again next year. That's not guaranteed. Sometimes these windows are very small. Ask Dan Marino. He played in the Super Bowl, I believe, his rookie year against the San Francisco 49ers. Never even made it back. So it just goes to show you got to strike when the iron's hot. But the defense of the Eagles really had a lot to say about that. They limited his big play ability, and that's what he has been known for, especially in these playoffs and wins against Tampa Bay, and then last week or the week before that against the Detroit Lions on the road. So he had his moments, but not those big moments that can kind of change the outcome of the game. And I think that was the difference in the end. I think the Commanders just weren't up. They weren't up for the task. I think the moment might have been a little bit too big, or, I'm not going to say it's coaching. I don't think the coaches had a role in that. I think the players on the field had a lot of mistakes. Austin Eckler, he had a fumble. So you cannot turn the ball over 4 or 5 times on the road in the playoffs against a team on paper that's arguably the best team in the National Football League and try to win that game. So they had a very tough road ahead of them, an uphill climb, and they just couldn't get the job done. And the Eagles did. And so sure enough, they're going to be facing the Kansas City Chiefs, which kind of segues me into the next topic here about the Chiefs. So they got their win 32-29 over the Buffalo Bills in a really good game, a really highly contested game. A lot of respect for Buffalo Bills. I thought that I didn't think the Chiefs were going to lose the game. A lot of people had the Bills thinking, oh, this is their year. But I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I'm not. Until they lose, not regular season, until they lose in the postseason, I'm not counting these guys out, right? But this was a good game. Buffalo definitely proved to me that they belong. I'm not sure how big of a window they have left open, but they're getting closer. But the Chiefs, to me, still are just one of the most clutch teams. You want to talk about the Eagles being the most talented team on paper? The Kansas City Chiefs are probably the most clutch team we have in the National Football League. Say what you want about the referees and the calls that they get. It is what it is, man. If you go back and look at sports, teams and players, they get calls. You go back to Michael Jordan, Game 6 of the finals against the Utah Jazz, where he pushed Brian Russell off. Yeah, well, could that have been offensive foul for Michael Jordan? Yeah. He did, but they let it go. But you still got to make the shot. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's just blasphemy and, it's hyperbole or whatever. You're a Chief writer. I'm not, man. I don't even like the Chiefs like that, but I respect what they're doing. I respect what they've done. They have the chance to be the first team, and I think in all of sports history, to go back to back to back. Now, some teams in other sports have made an attempt. I know in the National Football League, most teams that have been in this position have not even made it back to the Super Bowl. So the fact of the matter that they've made it back to the Super Bowl is pretty remarkable. So I'm on the side of that. Like, that's history in the making right there. But back to the game. I mean, this game was blow for blow. Teams were going at it. The Chiefs would score, Bills would answer. Bills would score, Chiefs would answer. Patrick Mahomes making really great plays down the stretch, putting his team in the ability to win the game, get a field goal, get a touchdown. And the defense, again, coming up with timeless stops, 4th and inches, 3rd and 1s. Like, it was a really, really pressure-packed game, but it was an enjoyable game at least from my perspective as a consumer. Listen, I can't say much more about Patrick Mahomes. I know he's not the MVP this year. but he's definitely a guy that you have to consider as one of the greats. I mean, right now, if he wins the Super Bowl on February 9th, he's got to be put in the conversation of greatest of all time already, with still a lot of tread on the tires. Now, I know Brady probably didn't have the amount of talent, perhaps, in those Super Bowl years that they won, but Patrick Mahomes is definitely making a strong case of being the greatest of all time to play the position, just by the sheer fact of his stats, his records, and Super Bowl wins. So, we'll dive into the matchup a little bit more probably next week in regards to the Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs. I think this is the best outcome that we can get. I know a lot of people they're probably tired of seeing Patrick Mahomes or Philadelphia, but listen, man, these are the two best teams left. Honestly, what else do you want to see? This is, to me, one of the better storylines, in my opinion. Detroit might have been cool, but you know what? They choked. They didn't deserve to be there. They choked. They didn't deserve to be in the game, right? Minnesota, okay, that's cool too, but yeah, like I said, we have history on the line, right? And a lot of people, like I said, they're tired of Kansas City because they feel like they get the calls. To me, that's just lazy, man. That's just lazy. Like, you got to accept greatness at some points. And sometimes being great sometimes is you're a little bit lucky too. And I get it. There are some egregious calls that have been made on behalf of the Kansas City Chiefs, but they still got to make those plays. They still got to make the tackles. They still got to catch the ball. They still got to throw the ball. They still got to make those phenomenal runs. The coaches have to make the play calls correct. Like, a lot of other things have to happen. And right. And for those of you who've never played organized sports or even football, man, like, a lot goes into a game. It's not just what we see on the field, right? What we see is a blink of all the preparation that leads up to that moment, right? Coaches are spending hours and hours and hours breaking down, analyzing tape, getting game plans ready. Players are focusing on those game plans. They're studying all of the tendencies, everything that goes into play, right? It's a lot goes into it. So the fact that you want to cop out and just say that the Chiefs they're in this position because they get lucky calls, that's not fair, man. And to me, I don't like that. I think it's a lazy take. In my opinion, say what you want to say about me. I think it's a lazy take. What they've been able to do the last couple of years, this last 6-7 years, is pretty remarkable. Patrick Mahomes has either been in an AFC Conference Championship game or in the Super Bowl. Come on. So, do some research, look up some other things, or just get a life, or just get a clue at some point. And again, I'm not a Chiefs fanboy. Hell, I was a Cowboys fan for 30-something years. I'm done with them, but I've just grown to appreciate what greatness looks like, and what they've done from an organizational level is by far one of the best jobs you can see in all of professional sports. So, this is the best matchups that I think we could have got for the Super Bowl. You got the rematch from 2 years ago. You got history with the three-peat on the line. You got Saquon Barkley looking to get a Super Bowl, after being one of the most phenomenal players in the National Football League. He cast away the Giants' ball and chain that's been holding him down. Like, come on, man. Like, be real. Who else would we want to see out there? Like, really? Come on. So I like that. So, all right. Which leads me into a topic that I don't even need notes for, right? I usually have notes, but for this one, I think the notes are all here because I've been a Dallas Cowboys fan probably since 1991, 92. So I was in the first, second grade. That's how long I was a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm 41. I just turned 41 yesterday. So happy belated birthday to me. Dallas Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer, and I'll talk about him in just a second. Not a very sexy pick, which, listen, I don't always need the sexy pick. Like, sometimes you just got to have a good plan behind what you're doing and roll with it. It doesn't always have to be extravagant or elaborate, but knowing Jerry Jones, it's probably pretty lazy. Now, I think they only interviewed 4 coaches for the head coaching vacancy in Dallas, and one of them was Leslie Frazier, which we all know what that was about. That's just a Rooney Rule hire or interview. They had to interview at least one minority or something like that. So we all know that didn't count. I believe Rex Ryan might have been in the mix, and I don't know who else. But I know for a fact they didn't go after Brent Johnson. I don't think they even attempted to even talk to Mike Vrabel, right? And those guys, they went and got their jobs. Ben Johnson, Chicago. Mike Vrabel went back home to New England. Okay. So who did they hire? Brian Schottenheimer. And we'll talk about Jerry Jones' press conference. I don't know a lot about Brian Schottenheimer, but I do know a couple things. Number one, he's the son of a legendary coach, Marty Schottenheimer, who had some really phenomenal San Diego Charger teams back in the day, and even some really good Kansas City Chiefs teams too as well. He comes from a legacy of coaches, particularly his dad. He has been an offensive coordinator in the National Football League. He himself has been a coach, I believe, in the National Football League for about 20-something years, right? I also know that his offenses have been somewhat mediocre. One of the years he was an offensive coordinator, I believe it was Seattle, they finished, in the top 8. The rest of his offenses in the National Football League have been pretty mediocre at best, finishing at 15th or 22nd or, whatever the case may be. Now, he was an internal hire. Sources are saying that the players themselves support this. And to me, that's red flag number 1. I don't care unless I am hearing from my superstar stud player that's done something. And I know they say Dak really loved the pick. I don't care what Dak got to say. I don't care what Micah Parsons has to say, because none of these guys have done anything in the National Football League. Anything. And for you Dallas Cowboys fans, it doesn't matter who they hired at coach. You just know they were going to get a lame duck coach anyway. You go back a couple years ago, Mike McCarthy, I was even on record saying this. When they hired Mike McCarthy, it was because why? Jerry Jones can control and manipulate Mike McCarthy. Well, why? How, Ryan? Mike McCarthy hadn't been in the league for a year at that point. He was fired or let go from the Packers job. He took a year off, kind of surveyed some things. Nobody was calling him. Jerry Jones did. Why? Because Jerry Jones knew Mike McCarthy was desperate to get back in the role of a head coach in the National Football League. So Mike McCarthy's going to be like, yeah, I need a job, so I'm going to say whatever you want me to say, Mr. Jones. And that's exactly what they did the last couple of years. So Mike McCarthy realizes, you know what? I need to fly this coop. I'm going to go stretch my legs and maybe interview some other jobs. He's still unemployed at this point, and most of the jobs are all but gone, except for what I believe in New Orleans. So good luck with that. And I still think that they're looking for their guy. I think they interviewed or talked with Kellen Moore again today. So I don't think Mike McCarthy's getting a head coaching job anytime soon. So here's Brian Schottenheimer. He was on the coaching staff this past season. He's an internal hire, very lazy. Jerry Jones did not even attempt to go look at any of the top candidates. And then you go to the press conference. He talked about taking big risk, and how he's bummed on himself, and he still thinks he can do the job. And that is the problem. Okay, let me look into the camera. The problem isn't part of it, but the real problem isn't the players on the field. It's not the coaching staff. It's not the sun coming through one of the ends of the end zone in Cowboys Stadium. The problem is Jerry Jones. And for you Cowboys fans that are still there, still beating that drum, thinking things are going to get better, because they may go draft Ashton Genty, who I doubt they will, because that's too easy. That's like the right thing to do. Jerry Jones is a terrible owner as far as football operations is concerned. And until he passes his team on to someone else that's capable, the Dallas Cowboys will be shit another 30 years. Okay? And that's just a hard, cold fact. If I'm a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, I don't care who they're drafting, who they decide to pick up in free agency, or if they decide to make a trade. It doesn't matter, because they're going to F it up anyway. It's been 30-something years. Just think about this for a second. Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. I believe they weren't even born the last time the Cowboys even made an NFC Conference Championship game. Okay? Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts lived their lives, played youth football, went to college, joined the NFL, and still made a conference championship game before the Cowboys even made it back. This is Jalen Hurts' second NFC Conference Championship game and second Super Bowl appearance. Jaden Daniels has just as many playoff wins as Dak Prescott and Tony Romo. Not combined, but still. Come on, man. Other teams have been bad, went bad, and have bounced back. Dallas Cowboys are still the same. So you Dallas Cowboy fans that are still out there, God bless you, because you know what? You're crazy. You are crazy. How can you put up with this? Oh, man, yeah, it's my squad. Dude, trust me. I know it. I get it. But this has been the best year of my football life, not worried or stressed out about these idiots in Dallas. Okay? Man, it was nice. It was nice. Cowboys would lose. I'd be like, cool. They suck. Okay, I used to be mad, man. My whole week would be ruined. That's the type of fan I was. But I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not giving them any more of my money or my time, right? I'm not invested with them like that. And I know there's diehards out there that would call me a traitor. So what? I don't care. I've given this team 30-something years of my life. And what have they given me? Nothing. The last time they won a Super Bowl, I was in the 5th grade, bro. I was in the 5th grade. I wasn't even in middle school yet. I'm 41 years old with kids and a house and a mortgage. That's how long it's been. So don't matter who they draft. Don't matter. It does not matter. Okay. So Jerry Jones is the problem. And Brian Schottenheimer may be a good coach. I don't know. I doubt it though. He's not going to be set up to win. Just like all the other coaches that Jerry Jones have hired, with the exception of Jimmy Johnson. All of them have been puppets. All of them. And nothing will change unless he's out of there. Jerry Jones is more interested in running this team as a reality show than as a football team. And in his mind, he still thinks he's a good GM. He's 82 years old, and he still thinks that he can make decisions that what's best for this team. And the problem, too, is you got these other fans that are paying. You're going to see their games. You got people that are flying all over the country to go see these ass clowns play. And you're giving them their money. And guess what? The Cowboys, they don't even win, but they're still the most valued franchise, sports franchise in all of sports. So in Jerry's mind, he's like, cool, we can suck, and I'm still going to get your money. At some point, you got to wake up and smell the roses, people. This team sucks. Jerry Jones is not a good owner. He makes money off of you. He's not getting my money anymore. He's not. He's just not. And I'm really, it really peeves me about them now. It's because when I look back at it, I have a room dedicated in my house to the Cowboys. I'm this close now to just taking it all down. And I need to. Because it's been a sham this whole time, man. It's been a sham, and I cannot go forward with this anymore. So, I'm still looking for another team to support. They will still have a spot in my heart, but I'm not going into every Sunday thinking they have a chance to win or even compete. I'm not going into the season thinking this is our year to win the Super Bowl, because they don't have it. They don't have the DNA. They don't have it. You know why? Because Jerry Jones. So I will leave it at that. And for some of you, when I post this, because I'm going to clip this up, you're going to get on my ass for it, but it is what it is. I'm being real. And tell me I'm not speaking facts. Tell me I'm not speaking facts, because I am. I've been invested in this club, like I said, for over 30 plus years. I've seen it all. Nothing changes. And I go on these fan sites. I look at other people that do videos on them. And it's like, how do you even get up in the morning and do that, man? Like, how? I just don't get it. How can you at this point, and I get a lot of these guys are young too. Like I said, I'm 41, man. Like, I've seen this team in the glory days. I've seen a lot of these teams, but they suck. And a quarterback is mediocre. And I wouldn't take that. I wouldn't say that. I don't blame the players, because it's not their fault at some point. Yeah, they got to play the games, but they're not set up to win, man. You look at, like I said, you look at all these other teams, and I'm ranting now. I'm ranting. People are calling me. I'm ranting, but it all boils down to Jerry Jones. We don't need to have a debate show on why the Cowboys are not going to be good next year. Mic drop. Jerry Jones, he sucks. Boom. Conversation over. And we're out. So there you go. There you go, Dallas Cowboys fans. Get out. Get out when you can. Because if not, next year we're going to be talking about the same thing. They're not going to be in the Super Bowl, and the Kansas City Chiefs are probably playing in another Super Bowl for a 4-peat, possibly. Or some other team is going to come from the bottom base. Because listen, this division is not going to get any easier. Hi, Veronica. How you doing? Pretty good. I'm ranting about the Cowboys here. But, the Washington Commanders are set up to be really good still, right? They weren't even expected to even win 6 games this year. Look what they did. They won 12, 13 games. Okay? You don't think the Commanders aren't going to be better next year when they really realize, you know what? We can add some more pieces here. We'll be all right. What's Dallas going to do? They didn't even win. Listen, this is how funny this shit is. Jerry Jones didn't even think about even offering anything to Derrick Henry. Like, because he felt he was good with Ezekiel Elliott. Like, he thought Ezekiel Elliott was coming back to do something for the Dallas Cowboys. That's what he thought. Right? He thought that Rico Dowdle had a pretty solid year. He thought Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn, and Zeke Elliott? And a lot of people, oh, Zeke got a lot left in the tank. You're an idiot if you thought Zeke Elliott had anything left in the tank. I'm sorry. You're stupid as hell. You're stupid as hell. But anyway, I digress. Anyway, let's talk about some teams that are doing something with their ownership, at least. And it's funny because the Jets are one of those teams like the Dallas Cowboys, haven't been successful in quite some time. But I will give credit to the Jets. They try, man. They are trying. They're making trades. They're doing whatever. It just ain't worked out for them, but their organization is trying. And now Woody Johnson playing, he's like Jerry Jones in a sense, but at least he's pulling the trigger on things. He's not gaslighting like Jerry Jones. So they go ahead and hire Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn, for those who don't know, played for the Jets back in the late 90s. He was a defensive back. I believe he was a first rounder drafted out of Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. He is under the Bill Parcells umbrella, right? I think he played with him. I believe he coached under him. I also believe he coached under Sean Payton as well, too. So he's been around some really, really good coaches. Now he takes over in New York. And this is one thing I will say about this, because those who watch me know that I don't really like defensive coordinators as head coaches. I just don't. And I'll tell you why in just a second. One thing I did like about Aaron Glenn in his press conference: culture. You got to have culture. My hat's coming off. Me, as a coach, I've coached football. I've been a head coach. I've been an assistant coach, coached in high school. You got to have culture. Without culture, you have nothing. Now, the biggest thing for me, if I'm Aaron Glenn, is I got to figure out what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, because you will not be able to establish that culture unless you figure out what he's doing, because he won't allow you to establish your culture. Because why? Aaron Rodgers is pretty self-absorbed, right? So he's going to be going to Central America or wherever the hell he's going to get his ayahuasca treatment, and he'll let you know. If I'm Aaron Glenn, I'm calling Aaron Rodgers. I'm saying, listen, here's the deal, man. Either you retire or you get on board. And the minute you start chirping and going to the media and doing all this passive-aggressive stuff, you're benched. You're done. Okay? That's number one. They got talent on this team. So I think in the end, this was a good hire for the time being. I don't like I said before, I don't like defensive coordinators as head coaches unless you get a mashup where you got the defensive coordinator who is not a head coach, but he goes out and gets a very competent offensive coordinator. From what I read, Steve Wilks is going to be the defensive coordinator. Steve Wilks is a fantastic defensive coordinator. And he had a cup of coffee as head coach in Arizona. But he's been on some really good defenses. He helped construct with I believe it was the 49ers defense last year. I think he took the year off. So he's been around some really talented players. So I think that's a good fit for him. And then Nick Caley, offense coordinator. I don't know anything about Nick Caley. So let me know in the comments if you guys know anything about him, because I don't. So Nick Caley could be a savant. I don't know. Right. But he's going to have to get that right, because this is an offensive driven league. So as far as is this going to be the guy for the next 4 or 5 years? Probably not. But then again, what coach lasts 4 or 5 years? But I will say this: if he's able to establish that culture, I think he knows what it's like to be a Jet. He's played in that market. He's played in the AFC Conference Championship game. He knows what it's like for this team to be good, because he was on one of those teams. Okay. But the problem with the Jets is that if you go back and look at their history, they like defensive coaches. Robert Saleh, Rex Ryan. Okay. I know you sprinkled Adam Gase in there, right? Todd Bowles, right? So for some reason, they like defensive coordinators as their head coaches. I don't like it, but it is what it is. So on the flip side, the other guy that got hired here in my hometown here in Las Vegas, Pete Carroll. For those who don't know, I was once a huge USC fan, especially during that heyday in the 2000s, where they had Reggie Bush, Lendell White, Matt Leinart, Pete Carroll leading the charge. I think this is a good hire. Again, kind of like Aaron Glenn. He's a coach. I mean, Pete Carroll's like 70-something years old. How much juice does he have left in the tank? I mean, realistically, I know he had a year off to kind of see things from a different perspective. But what better guy? And this is one thing I thought I would never say in one sentence. Raiders did a good job. When do you ever say that? Even Raiders fans probably like, damn, you know what? I don't even think I even said that. They did a good job here. Last year I felt like they got pressured. A lot of players were liking AP, especially what he did in the interim tag down the stretch. and off of emotion, Mark Davis like, oh yeah, I'm going with him because Max Crosby likes him. A lot of the other veteran guys like him. But AP was never going to be the answer. And it has nothing to do because he's black. Okay? Stop it with that. Okay? The guy just was not cut out to be an NFL head coach. Now, I get it. There are some things where, you see white counterparts getting a little bit more leeway. Hey, listen, I'm not stupid. I know these things exist in the world. But Antonio Pierce just didn't get the job done, folks. Right? And he basically was a stopgap at some point. And that's all it was. Okay? He's gone. Bringing a guy with a track record, like you go back to USC, you go back to Seattle. Pete Carroll knows how to build things, and he knows how to empower people to build those things. You look at his coaching tree. He's got guys that are coaching in other facets in the National Football League. That tells you something, okay? AP, I get it. He was kind of screwed from Jump Street because why? They didn't have a quarterback, right? But he hired his own coordinators. That didn't work out either, okay? So Mark Davis said, you know what? I'm probably not going to get Ben Jones because Ben Jones wants a young quarterback to coach. We're not in a position to maybe draft one now because AP kind of screwed them a little bit. So shout out to him. Because by them winning, I think it knocked them out of contention for one of the top quarterbacks. Or maybe they like one of the other guys that are maybe not high on the board right now, like a Jackson Dart or a Kyle McCord. I don't know, right? But I don't necessarily see. Well, I can see in a world where Pete Carroll maybe tries to get Russell Wilson for a year, right? As a gap, as a bridge, and see what they can do, right? So do I think they're going to go out and win 6-7 games next season? Probably not. You're in a tough division, right? The Chargers are going to be formidable. Denver, we see what they can do. And then also, Kansas City, right? So the reigning AFC West champ. So it's not an easy division. You're going to have to play those guys twice a piece. And I forgot who they got this year for their schedule, but it's not going to be easy. But Pete Carroll, I think, kind of like Aaron Glenn, is one of those coaches that you can use for now until the next guy comes on. Maybe a younger guy, but I do like. In the end, I do like the pick. I do like the choices for both teams. I think it was a very mature pick. If you couldn't go and get one of those big time guys like Ben Johnson was on everyone's list. Oh, except for Derrick Jones's, right? Because he wanted Brian Schottenheimer. Go figure. So, so there you have it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. You guys let me know. But that's all I got today, man. I went half an hour today, which is, my normal stuff, but I know I went over on the Cowboy stuff, but it really infuriates me listening to them. When I see Jerry Jones, I'm not going to say it, but he vexes me. I will say that. He vexes me. And I used to work for the man back in the day when I worked for the Cowboys many years ago in my younger days. So I was a Dallas Cowboy through and through. Okay. So if anyone wants to question my loyalty or where that lies, I've done a lot for the Dallas Cowboys, man. Like I said, working for them, I've supported them all these years, man. Like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just one of these bandwagon fans that was just born 2 days ago. Like I know what this team is capable of when they're led the right way. And Jimmy Johnson was the last greatest coach that we had. Bill Parcells tried to, but him and Jerry butted heads and Parcells had to go. And then we had guys like Dave Campo, like who the hell? Like people don't even like really. So those are the guys that Jerry Jones likes to hire. It's puppet men. So it is what it is. And unfortunately, I think Brian Schottenheimer is going to be a puppet. Shout out to him. I mean, he's getting a head coaching job in the National Football League. A lot of people can't say that. And his dad was a really good coach too. So maybe it works out for them, but I don't see it working out for them at all. So we'll leave it at that. All right, but that's all the time I got for tonight, man. Appreciate you guys for hopping in. For those that popped on here, man. Make sure if you do watch again, man, make sure you drop a comment, man. Let me know what's going on with you guys. Let me know if I'm off base or you want to talk about something else that's not on my deck of slides here to talk about. But other than that, that's all I got. I'll probably be back next week, Tuesday for sure. We'll get into the Super Bowl matchup a little bit more. We'll break down some ideas and who I think will win that game in New Orleans on February 9th. So other than that, man, enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm your boy, Ryan Flowers, a.k.a. Clutch Sports Talk. This is NFL Matchups. Like I always say, never settle till the work is done. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.